Hello, my name is Julian Edgar and I'm the author of this book, Vehicle Ride and Handling, Testing, Modification and Development. The topic of this video is why should suspension beginners buy this book? Now, the reason I'm doing the video is I'm getting a lot of questions, and one of the questions is, look, I'm just getting into car suspension. Is your book suitable for me? Yes, and here's why. Let's take a look at how a beginner would use the book. The first step is to go to the relevant chapter. Okay, it's a big book, there's plenty of pages, there's plenty of text, there's plenty of photos, but cut to the chase, go straight to the chapter that is relevant to the driveline configuration of your car. So if it's a front-wheel drive, go straight to chapter 10 on front-wheel drive handling. If it's a rear-wheel drive, go straight to chapter 11, rear-wheel drive handling. And if it's an all-wheel drive, go straight to chapter 12, all-wheel drive handling. So straight away, you're getting rid of the stuff that's not relevant to you. You're going straight to the chapter that's relevant to your car. Now, what do you do next? Well, go to the quick tips at the end of the relevant chapter. Now, at the end of each of those chapters, there's a box, a coloured box, and it's got quick tips on how to fix handling problems. For example, to reduce understeer, add negative camber on the front wheels. Now, if you're a beginner, that'll be completely new to you. And there's a list of different things that you can do depending on the driveline configuration of your car and depending on whether it's understeering, the front sliding wide, or oversteering, the back sliding wide. So that immediately gives you a mental map. Okay, here are some of the things that I need to pick from to do on my car. But what if you're not really sure of what your car does? Okay, I know it handles badly, but I don't really know how to describe or analyse what it's doing. Well, in that case, have a look at Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is on evaluating handling. How can I subjectively evaluate it? In other words, feel what the car is doing. And how can I objectively evaluate what it's doing? In other words, against some kind of measurement. So Chapter 8 covers evaluation of handling. And funnily enough, most books on suspension don't even do that. They don't even have coverage of how you can evaluate the handling of your car. So that chapter gives you an understanding of terms such as understeer, oversteer, and all of the different types of understeer and oversteer. It's not just a case of one tag fits all. And I think even more important, it tells you in that chapter what you should be aiming for in a road car. Also race cars, but the chapter really is primarily designed for road cars. So what makes a good handling car good handling? And that's actually a pretty interesting question, and I go into some detail on what you should really be aiming for in your car. Now, what if you don't really understand a lot of what's going on? You know, yeah, there are springs, there are dampers, shocks, but what do they actually do? What's the difference in their behaviour? What's their difference in their function? In that case, you go to chapters 2 and 3, chapter 2 on springs, their function, their types, chapter 3 on dampers, shocks, their different types, their different functions, what they're doing, how to tune them for ride, how to tune them for handling. And there's a lot of confusion, especially amongst beginners, and it's understandable because people often talk about shocks and springs as if they're doing the same thing, yet they're actually doing completely different things. Now, what if you want to get your head around more of the fundamentals? Okay, so there's all these different things happening with the springs and the dampers and all these different angles. I don't really even understand what most of it's about. In that case, chapter 1 is for you. Now, chapter 1 is quite a detailed chapter. If you're a beginner, I wouldn't start with it because I think you'll drown. There's too much in it, too many new ideas for a beginner. But after you've done the steps that I've already talked about, you can then go back to chapter 1 and say, okay, I want to understand a little bit more about things like sprung and unsprung weight, motion ratios, natural frequencies, virtual swing arms, virtual centres, anti-dive, anti-lift, roll centres, roll axes, and so on. Now, to emphasise, I wouldn't start with that chapter if you're a beginner, but all of the detail is there. You can use that as a reference chapter. If someone says something about roll centres and you've got no idea what they're talking about, you can refer back to that chapter and get a better understanding. even things like tyre slip angles, lateral weight transfer. That's how you actually set up a car to understeer, oversteer, or reduce those characteristics. All there in chapter 1 as a really detailed reference. So what are the steps? If you're a beginner, get the book, apply the content to your car's driveline type, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive. Remember, the car handles differently depending on its driveline configuration. In a front-wheel drive, if you put your foot down, it will understeer. In a rear-wheel drive, if you put your foot down, it will oversteer. And in an all-wheel drive, whether it understeers or oversteers when you put your foot down depends on the way the torque split occurs. All of that is covered in those chapters. Then learn what the different components of suspension do, and springs and dampers and anti-roll sway bars are really the areas to concentrate on. And then after you've mastered that, learn how suspension works as a complex interrelating system. This is where so much confusion occurs and is promulgated in discussion groups and so on, because people try to perhaps put too many things together and you know, talk about how they're working together without really understanding that. The outcome, better ride, better handling for your car. Now, the book's available from Amazon in your country right now. It's not a cheap book. It's lots of pages, lots of colour on every page, which makes it much easier to understand diagrams and things of that sort. Lots of words. So it's not a cheap book, but I am sure the first time you apply it in the modification of your car suspension, you will more than get the monetary benefit in terms of the savings that you make in not buying equipment you don't need, not buying parts you don't need, just going straight to the important things in improving your car's ride and handling. Thank you.